So Jesus is, he makes the comment that now they see him a little while. They're not going to see him, and then they're going to see him again. And Jesus saying this confuses the heck out of the disciples, right? And, for good reason, the Holy Spirit has not come down upon them yet. And Jesus is referring to his death, his passion, then his resurrection. He'll be with them for a little while, then his ascension, and then he'll be with them again with the sending of the Holy Spirit. So that's kind of veiled right now for the apostles. But, I think it really, it gets to our experience of the spiritual life. It gets to an important part of the spiritual life. And that is our experience of just the ebbs and flows of a daily life, or in the course of a week or a month, of times that we feel close to God, or times that we feel, desolate, consolation, desolation. Just things come up. And there's all of a sudden, it's like, man, I don't have peace right now. It could be little things with a decision that I just made, and then all of a sudden, I wake up in the morning or in the middle of the night, and it's like, I don't have peace. Sadness. These are all things that, Ignatius talks about, that accompanies, with discernment of spirits. And just the ebbs and flows of a day. Lack of peace, lack of joy, lack of love. Because we desire, right? We desire hope, truth, hope, joy. And we know that sometimes even in cases where as Ignatius says, one is moving from like a good spot, their state of soul is in a good spot, the Lord can still withdraw himself, where we're just in a desolate spot. We know that the famous example of John of the Cross, the dark night of the soul, or Mother Teresa experiencing a prolonged period of time as well. So I just want to offer one of the rules of Ignatius. If we find ourselves in a time of desolation, one of the rules that Ignatius gives, rule number 8, says this. He says, let him who is in desolation labor in patience. Right? So to work hard with being patient. When I'm in this spot where I don't feel God's presence, I have my sense of love is very low, or maybe it's non-existent. My sense of hope, joy. Okay, so him who is in desolation, labor in patience. Then he says, which is contrary to the vexations which come to him during this time. So one who's in desolation, the movement to labor in being patient is contrary to all these notions, or the vexations, he says, that are common to one who's in this spot. Like, I don't want to be patient. I don't want to sit with the Lord. I don't want to meditate more. I don't want to, I want to divert myself. I want to cover myself with other things because I want to, the feeling of lack of love, the lack of hope, lack of joy, that doesn't feel good. So he says, labor in patience. And he speaks of those things. He refers back to rule number 6, which includes the increased prayer, increased meditation in the Lord. And so, as I was praying this morning, I was thinking of a time where just, like a day-to-day, just a lack of peace. I might have shared this with you before, but it was when I was my first time out of the country, a mission trip in Brazil, and I had other college students under my care. And I remember getting to Brazil, we just land there, we get in this middle spot of the rainforest, we stayed at this convent, and it was like 11 o'clock at night, and I walk into this convent, and it's dark, and I see in the back is just the red sanctuary land. And I just was overcome with this sense of God's presence. And as John Paul II, his last encyclical, he wrote his last encyclical on the Eucharist, and he talked about what a gift it is as Catholics, the gift just in general that the Lord, for everybody, not just Catholics, but we believe it as Catholics and we know it to be true, the Lord's presence in the Eucharist. That he's talking about I'm with you. I'm going to be a time I'm not with you. This real presence that he gives us. So as I look through the darkness in the convent and I see the sanctuary lamp, and I'm like, oh yeah, Jesus is here. I'm in Brazil. I'm in the middle of the rainforest, and I just was overcome with, I'm okay. Like, I'm safe. God's with me. So as today, as we're going to hear more about tomorrow, as the reading continues, Jesus is stressing to the point that suffering's coming. Difficulty is coming. Lack of peace is coming, even at times. And he says to us, hold on. Ignatius says in Rule 8, when it's there and it's coming, hold on. Labor in patience and lean more into him, because he's here, he's present, he's with me. And that for us means to lean into the scriptures and lean into his true presence in the Eucharist. And we can see the light even in the midst of a thick darkness, as was my experience in Brazil.